What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 15 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop here with your defense preview this time around. If you missed it, I just released my wide receiver preview for the week earlier today, and the quarterback and running back previews out the day before. So this is the final one to get you all set for your positional breakdowns to lock in your lineups for the week. Of course, make sure you check out the depth chart updates I'll have on Friday as well, because you want to make sure you're locking guys in that are going to be playing due to injuries, resting players, etc. So make sure you check those out on Friday as well. But let's talk defenses this week. And, defense earlier this season is a position where, most years in the past it's kind of been, probably shouldn't start a defense. A lot of them don't provide value. This year there's been some big producers, but in the past 2 weeks, the highest total a defense has put up was, Ottawa put up 10 points last week. So that was the highest total in the past 2 games. So that's why we take a look at the defensive board here this week, and there are actually no options I'm giving a green light. I think there are, a lot of potentially good plays, but ones I could see backfiring here a little bit. So let's go through them price-wise, and it starts off with Winnipeg at $5,300 here. You need 13.3 points out of them to hit your full value on the week of 2.5 points per $1,000. I'm cautious on the Bombers. Last week I gave them the green light. They put up 8 points against Montreal, but if you're paying that price, 8 points isn't really particularly good enough. They are still by far the best defensive team on the season, but I think also, some of the credit goes to their defense being good. Some of the credit also has to go to their offense producing very well, and I see the Bombers resting a good number of starters this week, both offensive and defensive side of the ball potentially. Montreal is fighting for some positioning there in the East Division. So I'm cautious on this matchup for the Bombers. I think very well they could still hit that 13.3 points, but I could see them hitting something like last week around 8, which could be a disappointment at their price. Saskatchewan's defense, I'm cautious there as well. They've got a good defense. They've held their last 3 games, they've held their opponents under 20 points. But they haven't necessarily been forcing big turnovers or big sacks in the last couple of games either. You're looking at, in their past 4 or 5 games, they've had 1 game of 11. They've had a 5, a 9, an 8, and a 4. So much the same as Winnipeg. Good defense. Price is a bit high to necessarily green light and give you the best value here. I gotta say yellow light on the Alouettes defense this week. This might be the first time I've almost recommended a defense against the Bombers. The matchup, most times it's just not there. 3 points is what defenses average putting up against them. But Montreal does have the second highest average fantasy defense on the season of 9.3 points. They've got a very good defense there. And the only reason I yellow light them now this week and move them up to that category is because we know Sean McGuire is starting at quarterback for the Bombers. We could see other guys being rested this week as well, which, we don't really know what to expect from Sean McGuire. We could see some turnovers forced there and things like that. So it could be a good week for Montreal, but track record of teams against the Bombers, you just don't put up big totals. They did put up 8 last week against them due to a defensive touchdown, but that was also the first defensive touchdown Winnipeg's given up all season long. So could be a good play, could get a couple turnovers maybe on a young Sean McGuire, but I am not sold necessarily on them locking in them breaking that 10-point barrier. The Ticats defense, also yellow light, $3,699. They've had a couple games in a row where now they've put up some disappointing performances here. In their last 4 games, they did have a 16-point game against Ottawa. To be fair, a lot of teams have had big games against Ottawa. But other than that, it's been 5, 4, and 6 in 3 of their last 4 games. So The matchup with Toronto is pretty good. McLeod Bethel-Thompson threw 3 picks last week, has not been on his game as of late, and Toronto is giving up decent points to defenses this year. So I think Hamilton's defense is probably one of the more better options of this group that I would lock in this week, but they have just been a disappointment value-wise in 3 of their last 4 games, which makes me not want to lock it in as a green light. But I would probably say of these options, they are one of my favorites. Calgary's defense, saying yellow light on them, but they're also turning into one of my favorite options this week, and that's because the defense has all of a sudden put together some big games in back-to-back-to-back games after a really slow start to the year. Earlier, go back to before the last 3 games, they were probably averaging 3-4 points a game, and now they're up to 6.1 on the season because they put up 17, 9, and 9 in their past 3. The defense has been rolling pretty well here. They do face, the Lions, who have honed it back in the last couple of games and only given up 3 and 6 to defenses, but I think this is going to be a close game, and I could see this game kind of going either way. So cautious there. Really, not locking any of these as a green light option, but my 2 favorites here would probably be Hamilton and Calgary this week of the cream of the crop here. They're close to green lights for me. Just past performances, make me slightly skeptical based on the recent weeks. And then the options to stay away from. The Argos defense, their past 4 games has put up all under 4 points, so not really much value you've gotten from the Argos there. Even last week with a matchup against Ottawa where they held Duck Hodges to 70 yards passing, they still only put up 4 points defensively. So I don't think that's a good play. Edmonton's defense this season really hasn't produced. They are averaging 3.3 points a game. And last week they put up 6, which was close to value, but more often than not, this is a defense that just doesn't force turnovers, and so I don't like that option there. And BC's defense did have a good game against Toronto 2 weeks ago, but other than that, in their 4 of their past 5 games, it's been 3 points or less for them. So I don't like that option of the Lions either. So if I had to rank the options at defense this week, I'd probably, as I mentioned, go Hamilton and Calgary at the top, Winnipeg close behind, then probably Saskatchewan and Montreal. Then it's the 3 Toronto, Edmonton, and BC I'm staying away from. If I had to do kind of an arbitrary ranking between all of those yellow light options. But this is one of those weeks where I don't think any of them are locked, so perhaps it's a week where you want to focus on the other positions first, then see what kind of money you have left and go with your defense in that regard. That would be my recommendation. As I mentioned off the top, go back, check out the other positional previews as well. Perhaps that gives you some clarity on what kind of money you have to spend on defense once you lock those options in. And stay tuned for the depth chart update on Friday. I will go through all of the depth charts for this week's games to help get you set for locking in your lineup with the week kicking off Friday evening as usual. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you liked, what you didn't. If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. There's a link to that in the description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, check the link in the description to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix group over on the official CFL Fantasy site. You can play alongside myself and other viewers this week and the rest of the 2021 season. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.